Congressman Max Rose will deploy for the National Guard in New York tomorrow. He'll be on the front lines in his home district of Staten Island. Congressman Max Rose joins me now. Thank you very much for being here. I didn't think that I would be talking to you deployed for the National Guard in your home district, but that's where we are. What are you planning on, or what will you be doing?
Well, first of all, anything that I could be doing deployed with the National Guard pales in comparison to what our frontline medical professionals, what our first responders have been doing and will continue to do. Those are the frontline soldiers in this new war that we are fighting. But I am trying to do my duty, my small part, assisting in an operational role in New York City. I met with the Army Chief of Staff at the Javits Field Hospital several days ago, and it's truly remarkable under the leadership of Governor Cuomo what New York City and New York State is doing. It's a whole of government approach with the military working alongside FEMA and HHS and city and state agencies to collectively fight this virus that doesn't see socioeconomic status, race, creed, religion, political affiliation. That is the only way that we can get through this.
I'm just wondering what you are prepared for in the future. I know the NYPD has numbers down, the FDNY has numbers down, the crime has gone down in this city, but desperate times make desperate people. And if this goes on for a long time, people aren't able to get their unemployment checks or their stimulus relief, or if they're getting sick and not getting treated.
Sure.
Are you preparing for a worst case scenario where the National Guard has to restore order in New York? Is that even being considered?
No, look, I don't. I think that is a worst case scenario. And our NYPD, our FDNY, I believe, is prepared for any eventuality. But with that being said, I do think that we have to do everything in our power to be supporting our law enforcement and first responders. We have to significantly ramp up testing for them. It has been one failure on the city's part that we're not testing them nearly enough. And that's critical towards keeping them on the front lines. But here's what I do know about what New York City is facing right now in New York State. We are the epicenter of this crisis for the entire country. So while other cities and other states have some weeks and even several months to buy ventilators and buy PPE and surge their hospital capacity, we do not have the luxury of that much time. So the federal government's resources must be centered on New York City. Shipments of PPE, sending things like VA staff. Thank God that Naval Hospital is here now. I called on that hospital to come to New York Harbor several weeks ago. We have to continue with that type of surge and even more. When you think about dealing with this crisis, there's four legs of the stool. You have the hospital staff, you have the actual hospital structure, you have the PPE and the ventilator. We need all four, of course, with the most critical element of that being these fearless medical professionals on the front lines. But here in New York City, New York State, we are setting the model for how the rest of the country can deal with this. But we cannot deal with it in a silo. We need the entire federal government support.
I want to ask you about your other day job in Congress. Is there going to be a fourth stimulus? Is that being considered right now? And what could that look like?
Yeah, look, I sincerely believe that there should be a fourth stimulus. It is being considered. Front and center of that stimulus certainly has to be aid to our cities and our states who are experiencing unprecedented budget shortfalls. There will obviously be the need for additional economic stimulus. I think we always have to keep it in the back of our head that there's the potential for aiding our financial institutions as more and more small businesses and large businesses struggle to fulfill their loans. But we can't separate the economic from the public health. If we truly want to get out of this economic crisis, we have to get out of this public health crisis. And that only comes with a surge in those four things that I mentioned earlier. But after that, because we have to skate to where the puck is going, after that will need to be a surge in testing, lab processing, reagents, the ability to test people wherever they are. In that sense, it's very similar to the HIV/AIDS epidemic. Once an outbreak is quelled, you have to test to immediately identify those who are positive, isolate them so that we stem an outbreak, and treat those who are dealing with this virus. That's where we'll be if we want to stop a second and third outbreak.
Well, let me ask you about the future once we get past this and focus again on the economy. What do you think is going to be put in place, and what could be a permanent change in the way that we do business here in this country? Will there be a restructuring or a boosting of the social safety net? Is this going to be a call for something more like universal health care, more like a single payer system to make sure that everybody is covered once these people start leaving the hospital and realize they have thousands of dollars in medical bills because they caught a virus they didn't have a choice about? Is that going to be something that should be considered? What about plans for getting people back to work not in their regular jobs, which might not be viable any longer, but jobs that are green, jobs working towards a more efficient, greener economy?
Yep. So while I do believe that in the short term, not the near term, but the short term, we can start to think about revving the engines of our economy up again, so long as we address those public health concerns that I just laid out. Over the long term, we have to feel this sense of urgency around achieving universal health care, around stemming the skyrocketing costs of our healthcare system, as well as putting an infrastructure in place to deal with the next pandemic. In the same way how after 9/11, as a nation, we came together and said, evaluated sincerely, not as partisans, but as Americans, we evaluated how did we let this happen and what significant investments do we have to make to prevent this from happening again. We need to come together in a post-COVID world to make sure that we put the necessary investments in place to make sure this never happens again. Now, when it comes to universal health care, I sincerely believe that single payer is not the route, but there are multiple routes towards achieving universal health care. Maintaining the status quo, though, is certainly not the answer, and we shouldn't let it be.
Congressman Max Rose, who's deploying for the National Guard starting tomorrow. Congressman, thank you very much for joining us, and good luck out there.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.